So, welcome Sunday. I want to start off by saying quid pro quo. Something for nothing. That seems to be what's going on throughout all of the news. They're talking about quid pro quo with Donald Trump. I conclude that what's going on with Donald Trump has very little to do with what's going on in 10th Congressional District. I want to start off, though, by playing this clip.
I wouldn't suggest that they vote for any party or either party. I would suggest that the so-called Negroes become politically mature, realize the power that they hold in the field of politics, and then once the person who is running is aware that this man is awakened to the power that he holds, then that person who is running will approach that Negro on a more intelligent plane. As it is right now, most of the Negro leaders sell out to the white politicians for crumbs. And an awakening, a political awakening among Negroes will make it impossible for the present Negro leaders to sell our people out as they've been doing in the past.
So you do think Negroes should vote?
Negroes should do whatever is necessary to bring about a complete solution to their problem. If it, when I say whatever is necessary, whatever is necessary.
So, quid pro quo. that we understand, whether it's Ayanna Presley who talked about it, whether it was in 1967, Martin Luther King talked about it, that was Malcolm talking about it. We understand that we have black politicians in political seats that do not have our best interests at heart. We understand that. And the question over and over and over again is, what are we going to do about it? 1967. Again, Martin talked about it. I'm going to see if I can pull up that quote where he talked about it. And Malcolm talked about it. Ayanna Presley said, no more black faces without black voices. So the question is, what are we going to do about it? I saw a post on Facebook, and now this was in Patterson, but it's all related. And they were talking about how horrific things were in Patterson. The corruption, the crime, the filth. Sound familiar? It's going on in urban America across the country. And what I did was I pushed back in that thread and said, sure, you got to hold the politicians accountable, but you can't leap past the people who elected the politicians in office in the first place. So if you're going to look at the current circumstances and you're going to blame the politicians, then you have to look at yourself for the action and or inaction you took that might have led to it. You've got to look at your neighbors for the action or inaction that they may have taken that led to it. But you cannot look at the elected officials absent of the involvement or lack thereof that the community had. And so now, when we talk quid pro quo, again, in terms of Donald Trump, they're talking about conversations that he had with Ukrainian leaders or conversations that he's welcoming from China. But I'm talking about quid pro quo in terms of the 94% of people that voted for Phil Murphy. Right? Where was the quid pro quo there? Something for something. So Phil Murphy comes in and he says, I need to be elected. And 94% of black people respond because he said, I cannot do it without the black vote in particular. I cannot do it without the woman vote. So they respond. They give something. And what is the something we got in return? Nothing. So when we go around talking about quid pro quo, we're not connecting it to our own experience. We're looking at a soap opera play out on television. And as we talk about Monday through Friday on the Eric Dawson radio show, and I talked to Kevin Jenkins earlier today, we continuously talk about this battle between the oligarchs. And that's exactly what it is. It's not going to impact in any way, shape, or form what is transpiring in the 10th Congressional District. Services have gone down. Representation is absent. We have a congressman who continues to endorse and support inept candidates. Right? He talks on one level about the need for quality education, yet he either endorses candidates who are not qualified to sit on the Board of Education, or he's silent in the entire conversation about what's going on in the educational systems within the 10th Congressional District. Quid pro quo. Something for something. Your vote is valuable. When you give that vote, what are you getting in return? Better yet, why are we still talking about Donald Trump? Why are we talking about that quid pro quo? What does it have to do with you? That is the question that I want to ask everybody who's tuned in. And please hit the share button. And I'm sorry that I didn't introduce myself to those but if you're on my page, you know. I'm Eric Dawson. I'm running for the 10th Congressional District as Congressman. I am seeking to unseat Donald Payne. The charges against him from many residents that I've spoken to as I've knocked on doors is that he is just absent. That he's not speaking to the needs of those folks. And they need somebody in there who is going to represent them and not represent politics over people. Quid pro quo. What do you get? So the something you get from me for your vote, because I understand the value of it, is you get a representative who is interested in serving you. Not serving corporations, not serving big party bosses, not serving a party that has no interest in serving you. Quid pro quo. Something for something. When you go, whether it's to vote in the election that's coming up Tuesday, or whether you go to vote in the election that's the primary in June, where I'll be running, I want you to think. You have something. You have vote. What is the something you're getting in return for that vote? Quid pro quo. So, listening to, there was an article, and I posted it on my page, where Phil Murphy, Governor Murphy, is back and forth with former Governor Chris Christie. And they're pounding away at each other. But the thing that I found striking was when Governor Murphy laid out, or the article laid out, his accomplishments. And none of those things that he listed, or that were listed as accomplishments, in any way, shape, or form, directly impact or address any of the issues that are affecting the 94% of black folks that voted for him. And so what gets me is you have a congressman in the 10th congressional district, and though he is hammering away, or says he's hammering away at Donald Trump, and he's only focused right now, and there's I tried to get audio of it, and I would encourage you all to listen to it. Normally I wouldn't do this, but I would encourage you to listen to it. It's on another station, but I'll post it, where he's talking about what's going on down in Washington with this impeachment. And he doesn't seem quite up on it at all. But his focus for the entire time that he was on this show, it's called the Payne Report. And he's not addressing the water crises in Newark. He's not addressing the illiteracy rate in Newark. He's not addressing the poverty rate in Newark. He's not addressing any of those things. He's simply talking about impeachment. Why? Why? Why isn't he talking about the impeachment of some of the inept elected officials who impact you every day? Why isn't he lending his voice to the failed leadership of local politicians in the 10th congressional district? Why isn't he talking about that? Well, I'll tell you why he's not talking about it. Because those politicians, just like him, they were down in Atlantic City and they hobnob, they rub shoulders with one another, and they huddle up as a team trying to figure out how to screw the taxpayer here in New Jersey, and in specific, the 10th congressional district. They huddle together and they plot and scheme on how they can do better while you continue to suffer. And so there is no conversation about your child who's failing in these factories of death that we call schools. There is no conversation about why Newark is now looking to suspend the water, the bottled water give out as of Tuesday. Meanwhile, the EPA says we're not signing on board with that until we have more complete information. And then you have the city then turn around and say, well, but we're going to give water to the most vulnerable. We're going to give water to pregnant women, and we're going to give water to children under 6. Well, my question is this. If you're going to give water to pregnant women and children under 6, that says to me that you believe that they're vulnerable to something. So then why would you deny everybody else the opportunity at safety? And why wouldn't your congressman take any available time that he has to speak to the general public to admonish this administration for their utter failure? Why wouldn't he do that? But again, I'll tell you why. Because they're in cahoots with one another. Because as he seeks re-election, he knows that he is going to have to depend on the mayor of Newark and some of these other politicians who are failing you and lying to you if he has any hopes of being reelected. So his quid pro quo is not with you. His quid pro quo is with them. He gives them something which is silence and or cover, and they give him something which is support. And then again, who suffers in the end? I want you all to think about that as you contemplate who you're going to vote for. Why is he absent? Why is he absent on all of these things? You have to ask the question, why is he absent on all of them? And ask your neighbors, because your neighbors, what they decide to do impacts you. It has to be a communal conversation, not a one-off. Not you deciding that you're going to do one thing and somebody else is going to do something else. It's we as a collective, because one of the things that I want you guys to understand as we go through the next 36 weeks together of this Sunday conversation, they're not operating independently. They're functioning as a team. And every time we line up at every election, we're functioning as individuals. We have 35 or 85 or 105 candidates running, helter-skelter, not aligned on any central messaging, no real understanding about how to communicate. That's something that we need to fix too. But that is only going to get fixed if you stand up to fix it. If you listen again to what Malcolm said, he said, see, when you have a more educated voter, they can't come to you with the nonsense. The only reason you have these candidates that come and they run the way that they do is because there's this understanding that the bar in Newark is low. And the bar in many of the other towns within the 10th Congressional District, the bar is low. And that they believe, they have such disdain for you, that they believe that they can run and they can win without ever really communicating with you, without ever really addressing any of the issues that you have. Because they've seen it done before, which is why they do it. But quid pro quo. As you go into these elections from now on, please, give the proper attention to Donald Trump and what's going on. But understand, in terms of how it impacts your life, it is nothing but a distraction. I was excited early on during the presidential election, right? Folks were talking about issues facing the black community. We're talking about poverty. They were talking about equitability. They were talking about social justice. They were talking about reparations. They were having all of these conversations. And then we were going back and forth about how legitimate this one was, how sincere that one was, whether this one had a copious plan and was really interested in addressing those issues, or they were pandering to us. But it was a buzz within our community talking about this. But I want you to understand what has happened now. All of the oxygen has been sucked out of the air. We're no longer the focus of the discussion regarding politics and how it impacts the black community. The conversation now is on stopping Trump. That was, to me, the goal all along. If you looked at our local elections, that's what they said. They said it with Murphy, right? All of the Murphy stuff came out and it was about stopping Trump. Then when Menendez ran, and when Corey ran as U.S. senators, when Menendez ran as U.S. senator, it was stop Trump, right? And now here we are, right? Full circle. They're beating the drum to stop Trump. They're not beating the drum to get something of value for you. Quid pro quo. What is of value to you? Quality education, equal education. What is of value to you? Training, quality jobs, equal pay, right? What is of value to you? Reparations. What is of value to you? And where is your representative talking about those issues, cutting through all of the noise and saying, wait a minute, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Yep, we should be following this course. I'm not disputing that they should be doing that Donald Trump that they should move forward with impeachment. But let's be clear that there is no discussion right now from your elected leadership about issues that are pertinent to you. The impeachment of Donald Trump is pertinent to the establishment. It's pertinent to the oligarchs. It's not pertinent to you. Your issues existed long before Donald Trump ever arrived on the scene. And that is the truth. This idea of him destroying our democracy, sure, it's being stress tested, but it's going to last. It's not going to crumble and fall apart. But what will happen if we don't seize this moment to continue to elect progressive politicians who will fight the way that those newly elected fresh men and fresh women down in the Congress, as well as the squad, if we don't elect folks to do that hard work, then we will have squandered an opportunity that might impact us for decades, for at least 2 generations. That's really what's at stake here. And now, the only thing that I'm going to say about the Donald Trump thing is this. You see in its full glory what is going on. You have people who know that he has broken the law. You have people who know, and we know this, right? So the anger on this side is that, and you hear it, oh, well, if that was Obama or if that was a Democrat, then the Republicans would be doing whatever, right? I mean, we know they would be. And they know they would be. And so we know that they're liars. So we know that. But what we really know is that they don't have an interest in this country. Their interest is not in patriotism. That's not what their interest is. Their interest is in control. But I would say the very same thing for many people on this side, right? When it was Obama, when Obama wasn't doing some of the things that he should have been doing, people were giving him cover, right? And in some cases on the right, they were right in calling out some of the things that he did. The same thing with Hillary. Hillary was there. People on this side were giving her cover. So they were less concerned about patriotism and the growth and development of this country, and they were more concerned about being on the Democrat team or the Republican team and not on the right team. It's a team that I'm interested in, being on the right team, because at the end of the day, we as foundational African Americans continue to lose. So what's happening is you have Republicans who are concerned. So understand this, because I thought about this on my ride up from Delaware to do the show today. They are concerned about being reelected. They're not concerned about doing their job. And they're saying it to you. They're saying, I'm more concerned about going into my district and having somebody say they're not going to vote for me. Even though I know that this is the right thing to do, and leadership calls for me to do the thing that may not be the most popular thing. That's what leadership calls you to do. That in spite of what might be popular, if this is the right thing, then the reason you were elected and the reason you were exalted to this particular position was to stand in the headwind and say, listen, I know you don't want to do this, but this is the right thing to do. But what we have, and I fear we have it on both sides, we have people who get elected who are not really interested in leading. These are people who are interested in governing the affairs of the oligarchs. Let's say that again. And that's why I have an issue when we call them leaders. They're not interested in leading. They're interested in governing the affairs of the oligarchs. And so when they get elected, there is in fact a quid pro quo. Every donor that comes to them and writes a check, every corporation that hides their money in a pack for them, every lobbyist that takes them out to lunch and talks to them about how their vote on this issue or that issue will further this particular corporation's agenda, those are all quid pro quos. So the hypocrisy of all of them when they look and say, well, Donald Trump entered into a quid pro quo. Well, they all do it. They all do it, which is what Donald Trump said. Now, with a foreign government, a foreign leader, no. But they all enter into quid pro quos. And that's why we continue to lose. And so the biggest quid pro quo we see now is that these folks who masquerade as leaders, who are simply there to govern the affairs of corporate executives and the oligarchs, are looking and saying to the people who voted them in, I refuse to lead. I refuse to lead. So, we need to understand that. And we need to vote them out of office. We need to get folks in office who are prepared to lead and who are prepared to take risks. Take risks. That's what you're there for. And I'm not talking about taking irresponsible risks. But I'm saying if you know that something is right, then here's the risk you take. The risk you take is this. I know this is right. I believe in my constituents. I believe that they're intelligent. I believe if I take the time to inform them, to engage them, and then to empower them, that they will see that this is the right path to take. That is the risk. See, to gamble on you. But when they don't, when they fall back and take a safe position on it, it says, I have no intention on engaging you. I have no intention on informing you of the issue. The safe way for me to go is to do nothing, allow this to blow over, right? Get reelected, continue to collect my, build on my pension, collect my insurance, collect my salary, continue to employ my staff, and then take care of all the contracts that I was elected to oversee and govern. And that is the methodology. And so for a campaign like mine, what I need, if you're interested, if you believe any of what I just spent the last almost half an hour explaining to you, if you believe an iota of that, then you have some insight as to why your circumstance will never change until you get involved. And I'm asking you to get involved. I'm asking you to participate in this campaign that I am running here to bring about a change. If you applaud Ilhan Omar, if you applaud Stacey Abrams, if you applaud AOC, if you applaud Ayanna Pressley, if you applaud Rashida Tlaib, if you applaud Marianne Williamson, if you applaud Bernie Sanders, if you applaud Elizabeth Warren, these are all people who are on the outside taking big hits, taking big risks on you, and the fact that you, if they take the time to explain to you and engage with you, that you will likewise engage with them. And so those are all, and many more, of the freshmen and freshwomen Congress folk. I am aligned with them. I have a clear understanding of what's on this side. And so one of the, so people ask me, say, well, Eric, what are the things that you stand for? And what are the things that you fight for? And so I'd say the big umbrella is that we need to dismantle the entire system because it doesn't work, right? So that's the big umbrella, and there are little things under there. But to dismantle it, I think that we have to fight very, very hard for term limits. I think that we have to fight very, very hard for public funding of campaigns. I think that we have to fight very hard to get rid of line voting. I prefer choice ranked voting. And for you guys who don't know what choice ranked voting is, it gives you an opportunity to vote for 3 candidates and you rank them in the order that you like them. So if John, Mary, and Hassan, were running, right, then you may say, you know what, Hassan is my number 1 candidate, John is my number 2 candidate, and Mary is my number 3 candidate. And then when they tally them all up, whoever has the most votes in the number 1 position wins. So it's not a zero sum. It gives you an opportunity to voice your true opinion, which is I like this one and this one. I like this one a little bit more. But you don't have to just cast your vote for one. And choice ranked voting works. And it would eliminate a tremendous amount of corruption. It would eliminate having inept candidates, or it would play a big part in eliminating having inept candidates running and winning. Having the public financing in elections, it would wipe out the unfair opportunity that somebody who has a crap load of money could take and pour into an election in order to win. And obviously by having term limits. And I think that it is a false argument to say, well, people can vote and through voting they could get rid of term. I mean, they essentially term limit a politician out of office. And unfortunately, that's just not the case, because we understand, again, the conversation that I played at the beginning of the hour was Malcolm in the 60s talking about educating black people and black people getting out and voting. Martin in 1967 was talking about folks getting to the polls and voting. And so to believe that there isn't a tremendous amount of work that has to be done on this end, mainly because there's a lot of work being done on the other end to disenfranchise people, to misinform people, voter intimidation, voter theft. So they're all, and I'm not talking about in the deep South. I'm talking right here in New Jersey, and in particular Essex County and in Newark, and the voter theft, the voter intimidation, the voter fraud, the voter suppression, all of that is being done by black elected officials and other black folks, along with other folks. But black folks are deeply, deeply involved in it within the Democratic Party. And so overcoming that requires a lot more. And so when you have people who are in power to do that, and then you have them with these massive coffers of money to be able to pour into campaigns to misinform, you run into big problems. So, quid pro quo. What is it that you get? What is the something you're getting for the something they're asking you for? So the something they're asking you for is your vote. And what is the something you're getting in return? I'll ask you this. What is the something you've gotten over the last 10 years? What is the something you've gotten over the last 15 years? What is the something you've gotten over the last 20, 30, or 40 years? And you can look and see that many of the people who are in leadership or leadership positions within the Democratic Party are still there. They're still there. One of the other things that I want to talk about, and there was an article, and I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to do my graphics. I had to head down to Delaware, take care of some family business. But here's a headline. It's in New Jersey Globe, and I'm going to share this post in my thread. But the headline reads, Legislative Black Caucus Chairman says Murphy patronizes black leadership. Right? Senator Rice calls governor oblivious, calls for immediate action on social justice issues. I'll just read a little bit. It says the long-serving African-American legislator in state history says, now I want you to understand first thing, right? Because it said term limits. So he's the longest African-American legislator in state history. So he's been there a long time. Says that Governor Murphy and other Democratic leaders patronize black legislators and alleges they don't take them seriously. I agree 100% with that. Black elected officials, civil rights, and faith-based leaders in New Jersey continue to be taken for granted in a manner not dissimilar to the way that black voters have and brown voters and other people in general have been taken advantage of. Well, first I want to say that the black politician, let's not call them black leaders, in a faith-based community, a lot of them have chosen that path. So they're not being taken advantage of. They have systematically positioned themselves in a way to be able to leverage the influence that they now have. And they leverage that influence for personal gain. They don't leverage it to improve your circumstances. So I take umbrage with what the Senator Rice says when he says black elected officials and civil rights and faith-based leaders in New Jersey continue to be taken for granted. And taken for granted. They're being used exactly the way that they want to be used. And so when we call them slave catchers, we call them tools of the oligarchs, we call them guard dogs. That's the label that all of them wear. And they wear that label proudly because they get paid handsomely to do so. And so when most of them run for office, they have already signed over the fact that they are prepared to be a bigger slave catcher than the last one, or be a guard dog of the oligarchs that barks louder than the last one did. Right? So I don't cry for them. They're making money hand over fist at your expense. Cry for yourselves and then get up and make change. It goes on, it says, Rice told Murphy that it's impossible that you are oblivious to the treatment that I and other leaders of color have repeatedly experienced time after time. So here's the thing. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results, right? So when he says time and time and time again, that means that you've suffered the abuse over and over and over again, and you've done nothing to change it. Here's the question that I would ask Senator Rice. In your long tenure as the state senator, how many people have you mentored? How many people have you empowered and brought up through the ranks and are now elected officials who might be able to stand side by side with you and fight these fights? I'm waiting. But you do it, right? And so what I've concluded about Senator Rice is that he too has found this niche. where he purports himself to be the slayer of Goliath, the outsider, the one railing against the establishment. In the end, measurably, how much better off are we for that? I would prefer a state senator who said, I'm building. I've got these 7 interns that I have. I've got these folks who I'm bringing up through the ranks that I'm organizing. I'm working with district leaders. I'm lending my voice at the Board of Education. I'm lending my voice in these areas. And here's my body of work in terms of people who I've elected, who I've helped get elected to fight this fight with me. Not that I'm just fighting for myself and collecting my pension. And this would be his 3rd pension, right? Because he was with the city. Wasn't he with the county? And now he's with the state. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I measure everything now. But let me continue to read. According to Rice, whenever the Legislative Black Caucus, who are these people, meets with white elected state officials, we are met with patronizing conversations, a smile, the pretense of understanding, and empty promises for cooperation. But again, do you know why? The reason that you're met like that is because you have no organization, you have no power structure, you have no financial base. You can't raise any damn money. You can't do anything. And they know you can't because you've never really tried. You've never tried to organize people. You've never worked to really call out the black politicians who are failing us. You align with them when it's convenient for you. And then you're quiet. You don't dismiss them. You're just quiet when it's not. And so in a lot of circles, you're not trusted either. So what you have, and it's not unlike what Trump has or what the rest of these politicians have, you have your very specific base. And that's it. And I would dare, Senator Rice, that your base hasn't grown. And so these savvy white politicians, what they do is they look at exit polls, right? And they can determine that you got the same number of votes that you got in the last election. Or maybe you got fewer votes. And I would also dare say that the generation of people that used to vote for you, they're dying off simply because of age. I would dare say that most millennials have no clue who you are. And so your body of work as a long-standing senator will, in the end, when you're long gone, will be for naught. Because you will have built nothing outside of you. And they know that. See, what they build is institutional. What they build is generational. So they're building an organization, and you're taking care of yourself. That's why they look at you and they don't take you seriously. That's why they look at the Black Caucus and they don't take them seriously. Because they see how you use us. Even when you pretend not to use us, they see when you use us. The problem is that a lot of us don't see when you use us. So we cheer you on, believing that you're fighting Goliath, when in fact you're just padding your pension. But let me continue to read. Rice leveled his complaints directly at Murphy, Steve Sweeney, and Craig Coughlin, suggesting that it is as though we are expected to be grateful for simply having FaceTime with you, the Senate President and or Assembly Speaker. Well, again, that's right. They should be grateful. Yeah, you won, but look at how you won. Ride through the West Ward. So we blame, look at it. We lay some blame on the mayor. We lay some blame on McCollum, right? Joe McCollum. We have to lay blame elsewhere too. So you've got this senator who's got his office in the West Ward, state senator. Ride through that West Ward and you tell me what it looks like. And he's the longest, I want you to understand this, beating his chest. He is the longest standing African-American senator who oversees that mess. And the people up there are not outraged. Not outraged. that it looks like that. And then who is he railing against on a local level, on a municipal level? Just about the garbage that sits outside his office in the West Ward. Or the crime that takes place right around the corner from his West Ward offices. And so when these white politicians do what they do, they say, hey, dude, listen, yeah, you're the longest sitting African-American senator who continues to allow his people to live in poverty, to live in filth, to live in crime-infested neighborhoods. That's the guy you are, who doesn't sit. You'd rather come down here and rail away at us for theater as opposed to going in your town and dealing with that local municipality that's screwing over your people. And you want us to give you time? But we keep electing him. The 11-term Essex County Democrat was an early supporter of Murphy's bid for the 2017 Democratic gubernatorial nomination and had been one of a small handful of senators, right? Just a month before the midterm legislative elections, Rice says he's disappointed with Murphy. Right. Just before the midterm legislative elections, Rice says he's disappointed with Murphy. He's disappointed with Murphy. Right? And so this gives him another Goliath. I want you to understand that. See, it gives him another Goliath. See, I'm railing against him. Not fixing crap in my community. But I'm railing against him. And we have to stop being so damn emotional. To say, well, he's railing against him, so, we're going to put him in office so that he can continue to speak truth to power. Because Ron Rice speaks truth to power. What has the truth to power gotten you? What does he think about the water crisis? What does he think about Ras Baraka? What does he think about the 9 council people who have essentially abandoned their positions as a legislative body in the city of Newark? What does he think about what's going on with the congressman? What does he think about those things? Has he weighed in on any of that stuff that impacts you? So there is another there's another article that I want to say this before I but one of the other things that I am for, right? So I don't list it as what do they say? What is your platform? It's not a platform, right? But it's just me being a foundational Black American and me understanding the various issues. So this weekend when I was in Delaware, I heard this story about a woman who was driving in a car and she had we were talking about white privilege. And I said, well, to sum it up, white privilege is never having to tell your white kid to put his hands on 10 and 2, turn on interior lights when the cops come. That's white privilege. I mean, we can go deeper than that, right? It's a lot deeper. But if you've never had to do that, never had to even think about that, right? It's white privilege. But we were talking about that, and what came up at dinner was this idea that this Black woman was driving with her 2 sons in the car. I think they were 10 and 7 years old. And police officer pulled her over because she had, the officer believed she had run a light. Whether she ran it or not, I don't know. But he believed that she had run a light. So he pulled her over. And when he pulled her over and came up to the car, the look on the officer's face was so compelling that it forced her to look in the back seat where her children were, where her 2 sons were. And what I was told was that when she looked in the back seat, both of her sons were in the back seat with their hands up like this. And the police officer was so mortified that he gave her a warning, didn't give her a ticket, didn't have any further conversation with her, and let her go. So I thought about it and I said, one of the things that has to happen in our community is there has to be an impact study on macro and microaggression. We have to have a full understanding of how these macro and microaggressions impact black men in particular, but black women too. Because now she's got to go home and she's got to unpack all of that for her sons. So the world just goes on, right? The cop goes back and does what he does. Everybody does what they do. And these two boys have to get up and they have to go to school the next day. What was the impact? So one of the things as a congressman in 10th Congressional District is I would call for an impact study. So we can begin to, as we're working to create a more equitable and more, and to deal with, these racial issues, we cannot ignore the impact that these encounters have. We can't ignore them. We cannot ignore the impact that violence has on not just our young people, but everybody in the community. And then we need to begin to pour resources in to be able to deal with all of those issues. But that's not happening right now, right? So that kid just went home, right? And then, we're supposed to on some level believe, well, at least nothing happened. At least she didn't get a ticket. We should be happy about that. Well, at least they did what they were supposed to do because we had to talk with them. But even having the talk with them is a microaggression that says to them, you don't belong here. You have to adjust who you are and you have to adjust your behavior because you're not really welcomed here. And so we accept that, but we don't accept that it's a possibility that there's some serious impact. And so, like I said, not so much a talking point or a platform issue, but just an issue, right? That a mom would like to know after having that happen, that she can call an 800 number and have a conversation, right? And that there is some studies done that says, hey, listen, maybe you should have some sort of counseling or something where this child is, where his self-worth is reinforced or her self-worth is reinforced. Because in that moment, they don't feel as equal, right? As their white counterpart, as somebody else. And then it made me think about this whole issue that's going around with the Dallas police officer that shot. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, except to talk about the mindset, right? So the Dallas police officer who shot her downstairs neighbor. She assumed that she was in the wrong apartment, but she wasn't, right? At least that's her story. And folks are outraged at the fact that the brother of the murdered victim found it within him to apologize. And I think that the anger, the frustration, the desire to say, screw that, I'm not apologizing for anything, has everything to do with the fact that we know that if the shoe were on the other foot, we know through history that if the shoe was on the other foot, that it wouldn't have gone down like that none of that would have happened, right? The judge wouldn't have brought over a Bible, the bailiff wouldn't have combed her hair if she was black, the white guy wouldn't have come over and hugged her, there would not have been a 10-year sentence. So all of that, carrying that around as an African American or foundational African American, carrying that all around, what is the cost of that? Like, how does that affect us? How does that affect how we nurture and raise our children? And then what is it that is passed down to them through this behavior that we have to adjust to? Right? This hostile behavior that we have to adjust to. So I think that there should be an impact study. I think that there should be money set aside for that. And I think that we should be about the business of figuring it all out, right? What is the other thing? Black issues on education. There was, you know, I saw on another page that I was commenting on. I just have been cantankerous this weekend, going on the pages, engaging in conversation with folks. So one of the things that I saw on several posts of people having these conversations about Bernie Sanders, and again, I'm a big Bernie Sanders supporter. Let me scratch Hillary. I'm a Bernie Sanders supporter. I'm an Elizabeth Warren supporter, and I'm a supporter of all of the students of that Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren school of tear it all down. Right? That's the name of the school, Tear It All Down. And so all of the ones who are part of that school of Tear It All Down, I'm in support of them. I want to go to Washington. I want to fight with them. And I want to bring back tangibles for the 10th Congressional District. When I listened to the conversation about Bernie Sanders and Bernie Sanders having a heart attack, and folks are saying, well, scrap his campaign. He's 78 years old. He needs to be done. I take issue with it, right, in a big way, because a lot of these people that I see doing that or saying that are not participating at all, right? They're like they're couch potatoes. They're on the sidelines, on their Twitter feeds, on their Facebook feeds, being pundits about what's going on without really understanding it. And so I asked, I literally went through, I said, well, who should we replace him with? Like who, if you say that he should fall out for who? And for what? And then what are the tangibles? What are the things that are going to be broken down from this system that doesn't work for 99% of people? And they really didn't have answers to that. And I don't know, and I got to tell this to you guys, I don't know that there's an age limit for somebody who loves and cares about people, right? That should ever, be quantified by age, right? But probably more by passion and more by consistency in a body of work. And so looking at those factors, and maybe it's me being selfish, right? Well, I know it's me being selfish, me wanting him to stay in the race. The doctors say that he's fine. He says that he's fine. So I'm saying, Bernie, get back in the race. So, my argument to those people is, well, give me an alternative. Give me an alternative that's talking about eliminating student loans. Give me an alternative that's talking about free college tuition. Give me an alternative that's talking about tearing apart Wall Street, taking money out of elections. Give me an alternative who's talking about all of those different things. And if you can't give me an alternative, then sit down, because I know that you're an enemy of the people, and that is the fact. Right? Through ignorance, an enemy of the people through ignorance. And I can't really get into the threads. Alicia, I'm going to read a little bit. She says, Senator Rice is definitely not trusted. And all of these things should be about trust. They should all be about trust. Munira, how are we going to change the paradigm? Sis, it takes consistency, right? And it takes doing things that produce measurable results. So what we know are a couple things. We know that none of the people who are currently in office, including Senator Rice, who is on his 11th term, believe in term limits. If you were to poll the folks within New Jersey, you would get numbers that would overwhelmingly show you that people want term limits. So one of the things that that everybody who's against those people who don't want term limits, even if you're an opponent of mine, right? If you believe in term limits, then we can align on that. We can disagree on these other 15 things, but we can align on term limits, and we can both go out and we can recruit people to vote against term limits. So now, by doing that, we eliminate all of the people who are for term limits because we've united around those things. But what we don't do, sis, is we don't organize around anything that we all agree on. We believe that if you're running and I'm running, that we are mortal enemies. And so that's exactly what they want us to believe, right? As opposed to saying, well, you're running and I'm running. Are there any common interests that we have? Is there any way for us to work together? So because what we do know is that both of us are running because we both believe that that person shouldn't be there. We believe that, right? We're running because if we believe that that person should be there, we wouldn't run. So however many people run, and I've gotten calls from a couple of people who said to me, hey, Eric, can I talk to you? I was thinking about running for the 10th Congressional District. I say, go for it. I don't own it, right? I am going to use this opportunity to talk to people about what my bona fides are, give you an opportunity to call me, let you know what I've done in my life and what qualifies me to be able to go down there and assess, because that's really what it is, right? It's assessing what's happening and then making decisions that are pragmatic and decisions that are smart ones that are going to benefit you. But bigger than that, it's about having integrity, showing a life's work of integrity, and then being able to go down and withstand the corrupt winds that are inevitably going to try to shake you to your core. Right? And me being an insider, I've been there. I've seen it. I've seen people that my dad has gotten elected that came to our house and sat there and said, Carl, we've got to tear down the machine. Carl, we've got to get rid of corruption in politics. And my dad worked very, very hard to get those people elected, only to watch them flip. One after another, after another, after another, just flipped. Because when faced with those political winds of corruption and what you can get for you, right? Because that's what they do. They say, well, you've made it across the finish line. You don't need those people anymore. Now you have us. You have the party. You're in now. And we'll take care of you. That's what they do. And because they have the party is going to work for them and with them. They figure, they abandon, they get paid, and they're all a part of the system. We saw it. You see it with Ras Baraka. This is exactly what he did. Right? But there's so many other ones who have done the same thing. So sis, to answer your question in short, we all have to get together. We have to realize that we're all in it fighting as one, right? We're all part of that 99%. That's how I believe that we get it done. Well, we do need new leadership to bring change. But here's the thing, right? So you can continue to sit and wait for people, which is what we do too, right? And my advice is that folks don't do that. So even though I announced that I was running for the 10th Congressional District, my hope is that whatever these different organizations are, and I've been meeting with a couple of them and I have many more to meet with, that in meeting with these organizations, we can have some sort of a conversation about what that something is that they want, right? Quid pro quo. What is the thing you want? And I'm not talking about contracts and things like that, but what are the things you want? You want legislation to be able to do what? How do you want to advance the community? How do you believe me going down there could get that done? Hold on, caller. 1 second, caller.
Announced that we will be winding down distribution of
Oh, wait a minute. Listen.
to residents except for pregnant women and families with children under the age of 6. Preliminary testing results performed by the city, the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, and the United States Environmental Protection Agency show that 97 to 99% of filters tested removed lead below the federal action level.
Hello, caller.
Good afternoon, Newark residents. On
Oh,
Friday, the city of Newark...
it's the same thing. So they're sending out these robocalls now. So you should be getting them. So that was a live robocall from the city of Newark saying that they're going to suspend the water. But I just told you that earlier in the show that they're planning to suspend the water, right? So but what I was saying before the call came through was that we have to figure out, Munira, how to. So my question to you is this: whatever organization you're a part of, and all the other people who are part of organizations right now, do you know all of the people who are considering running for U.S. Congress? Have you reached out to them and say, hey, listen, I know that you're thinking about running. We want to sit down with you and we want to try to figure out, because you want my vote, right? That's a something. And then here's the thing that we want in return. And can we align ideologically on these two things? And if not, then you kick me out and you bring in the next candidate, right? But at the end of the day, if you as an organization haven't had a conversation or several conversations with candidates who are running for these particular seats, then how do you expect to have any change? And how do you expect to have them listen to you? So this is why I say Senator Rice, when I read the article, it was just ridiculous, right? Because, he's got no organization for these white electeds that he's criticizing to be concerned about. Right? So he's got no organization that can impact them, that can affect them in any way, any meaningful way. So, but that's the way that you can do it too, right? So whether it's me or anybody else who, and I don't know if anybody else has announced that they're running, but find out who they are. I know somebody told me that they were going to run. I didn't see a formal announcement come out, and that's why I haven't mentioned the name. But find out who these folks are, right? Because I would want to meet them too. Say, hey, listen, you're running. Why are you running? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? What are your qualifications? Here's why I'm running. Here's what are the things that we're united around? Because in the end, right, out of the group of people who were separate from Donald Payne and this failed establishment, the hope is that all the people who fall short would come aboard. And that's something else that doesn't happen, right? To come on board to help out. And we've seen, a lot of serpents, in the waters of the political rivers here, in Essex County. We've seen people run for whether it's council seats or Board of Education seats or any other seat, and when they fall out, they simply go and align themselves with the wrong people. And we know that the reason they do that is, all they wanted to do in the beginning was build a profile that was big enough for them to be able to leverage. So they, again, like I said in the beginning of the show, all they are interested in doing is auditioning to be a slave catcher, auditioning to be a guard dog for the oligarchs, or auditioning to be a poverty pimp. So those are their goals. Now, listen, what I want to do again is I want to stop and let you guys know that what I'm doing requires some money. Every campaign does. It requires people getting involved and making a commitment and making an investment. I'm not looking for massive investments. I don't believe that it would take a whole lot to win. When I looked at what has been historically done in the congressional race with Donald Payne, he hasn't been very impressive in terms of the numbers that he puts up, but he raises a reasonable amount of money. So there are a couple things that I'm looking to do. We're formulating this circle of folks who have committed to contributing $15 a month for our campaign for the next 8 months. That's June. right? That will help us get some things done and help us manage the website, help us manage the show, help us get a few other things done. And on the periphery of that tight group of people, we're looking for folks who are interested in making a $2, a $5, a $10 contribution. If that's something that you want to do or you're contemplating doing it, please reach out. I see that he's in the thread right now to Mark L. Duncan and let him know, and he'll take care of it. What I'm looking at this show as being as well is a as much as an introduction, also an interview. So if there are things, along with me going and knocking on doors and folks are asking me questions and I'm answering them for them, if you have questions, put them in the feed and afterwards I'll answer them, or call in to the show, 908-481-5499, and ask your questions. And I'll do my best to answer them. But this is an audition. Now, what I'm going to say to you is this. It would be lovely, right, if every candidate who is running would do the same thing, that they would extend themselves to you for an hour and a half every Sunday from now until Election Day and leave themselves open to answer questions from you, right, so that you can make informed decisions about who to vote for. So I would challenge anybody who is contemplating running to do one of two things. One, make yourself as transparent and as open as I am doing right now. Or two, I'll invite you onto a platform that we can create where all of us can sit every Sunday and we can talk to the voters in the 10th Congressional District about what it is that we individually and or collectively want to do to help improve it. So that would be a challenge that I would give them. Yeah. So I'm reading this, Renee. Look, what Renee Brooks wrote in, and she said she's pissed off about the witness Joshua Brown being murdered. She's talking about what took place in Dallas, Texas, and so the witness who testified was gunned down in a drive-by shooting, right? Look, in the end, nothing is going to fundamentally change until we change the people in positions of authority. That is the truth. And so we can be upset about what happened to the person in Dallas, Texas, but just a couple of months ago, there was a kid who was chased down by police cars in the city of Newark, and it was all on the body cam and on the dash cam, and the kid was shot, and and then money was raised for the cop, and people were outraged about it, and all this stuff. So we have things that take place in our own backyard that we have ample space to be pissed off about, and we can bring about change. The question is, when you're pissed off about it, what do you do? How do we change it? What is the cause of it, right? So we cry racism, we cry that we need folks focusing on social justice. So we talk about all those things, and so the question again is, how do you get there? And what I'm saying is that you don't get there, I don't believe, by focusing on this impeach Trump. I think that you get there by looking and saying, what are the laws that are in place that allow things like this to occur? Who are the people who are in place that allow these things to occur? How do we systematically get rid of those people who are in place that allow these things to happen? But to watch them, and I'm not discounting the anger, the frustration, all of those things. I said, but we have to bottle it up, and then we have to focus it somewhere to be able to accomplish something. And I'm saying at the end of the day, if we haven't accomplished anything, and we haven't to date, right? So again, the clip that I played at the beginning of the show, where Malcolm talked about what we need to do, or the quote that I posted from Tavis Smiley's book, Death of a King, where in 1967, Martin Luther King was talking about it, and we're talking about it now. We need an uprising. We need folks to get involved. We need folks to be participatory in the electoral process. We need to make sure that we are kicking out folks who are upholding a government that we know doesn't work for us, one that leaves us feeling angry like this. That's what we need to do. Renee, I appreciate you. Mark's going to connect with you. If there are other people who are interested in, and they call it begging, right? But this is the part of the campaign where you beg, because posters are going to need to be done. Some campaign lit is going to need to get done. Some other things are going to need to get done. And so, again, if you believe that things are not working, they're just fundamentally not working. Like, I would love to sit down with Senator Rice and say, God, why are you going to run for another term? For what? Why? When you ran the first time, was your understanding that it was going to take you 11 terms? Why is Donald Payne running again? What has he accomplished? What meaningful thing has he done? My interest is in being there for 2 terms. Hopefully I can accomplish some stuff in 1, but it's 2 years, right? So typically running for Congress is 1 year you're running, the next year you're campaigning. So even though you're in the office for 2 years, you're trying to get stuff done for 1 year, and then you're multitasking in the second year, and trying to get reelected, and you're trying to manage the things that you're trying to push through, the legislation that you're trying to push through, sponsor and such. But 2 terms and out. I want to go in, I want to make my mark on, like I said, trying to figure out how to fight like hell to try to figure out how to create an impact study. I want to fight like hell to try to create legislation for term limits. I want to fight like hell to try to get money out of politics. I want to go in, I want to fight like hell to make sure that folks are not just studying reparations, but that folks are willing to sit down with people who've already done the work, who've already laid out what the cost would be, and that we just say, do it, because there's no more discussion needed, right? So those are the things that I want to go, and I want to choice ranked voting, because I think that it empowers everybody. Right? So those are the things, right? And they will have an immediate impact. An immediate impact here in the 10th Congressional District, as well as other places. But it will have an immediate impact, because what it'll mean is that that these politicians won't be able to intimidate you anymore, that they won't be able to amass tremendous power anymore, that they won't be able to take advantage of people who don't understand the political process by just having you go vote line A, right? So all of those things will have a profound impact on the 10th Congressional District, and will lead to more qualified candidates getting in the race. Because right now, more qualified candidates are discouraged from getting in the race because of the what seems to be the insurmountable mountain, right? Raising money, creating an organization, doing all of these things. And so they say, the heck with it, because they're not prepared to make an investment in you. One that's big enough, that's bigger than the obstacle that they believe they have to overcome. But you all can be a part of starting a process of ending that by sending folks to Washington who are going to fight for these issues. So, quid pro quo, something for something. What is the something that you want? What is the something that you're giving? You're giving your vote in exchange for what? What is the? There were a couple other things that I wanted to talk about really quickly. I can't get them up. Bear with me for 1 second. Um, Give me 1 second. There was something else that I wanted to talk to you about. Oh, so I don't know how this is going to work. This is what I want to talk to you about. And here's the headline. It came from Business Insider. 29-year-old mayor gave his city's poorest residents a $500 a month stipend, right? Which is this universal basic income thing. And this is in Stockholm where he did it. So he's given $500 a month, no strings attached. And I can't recall the number of residents that he's given it to. I'm trying to find it now. But these are people who are a median income around $46,000 a year. And he said that it's working out really well for him. And it's working out well for them, and that the majority of the people are spending their money on taking care of bills. What is this? Is on average, participants in Stockholm's trial spent most of their stipend, around 40%, on food and others, and another 24% on sales and merchandise, including trips to Walmart and such, and then the balance paying utilities and buying gasoline for the car and car repairs and things like that. Look, the fact that we're talking about universal basic income should frighten you. The fact that corporations have been allowed to. Let me not just say they did it. They were allowed to. They were allowed to through policies that were put in place by elected officials who were sent to Washington to govern the affairs of the oligarchs. Not govern your affairs, but govern the affairs of the oligarchs. So they went there and they governed their affairs, so much so that they created this chasm between the 99% and the 1%. So much so that people are saying we have to now give universal basic income. The gap is so wide that we won't be able to recover unless we give people free money to be able to pour back into the economy. And if that's not enough to wake you up to say something's fundamentally wrong, that we've gotten to the point where we need to do this now, that we have undereducated, that the human capital that exists within our country is such that they haven't been educated and trained to be able to compete with the emerging job markets. Meanwhile, you have in all these different towns, you have workforce development, you have all this money, you have people who work for workforce development, you have folks who are touting all of these job numbers and so forth and so on, right? And you have teachers who are getting raises, and you have administrators who are getting raises. You have millions and billions of dollars, in Newark's case, pumped into the school district. Yet, Johnny can't compete for 21st century jobs. So, on a national stage, presidential candidate Yang is talking about universal basic income. And you have this mayor in Stockholm who is giving $500 a month away to residents to be able to fuel the economy. So I'm not, given the dire circumstances, I'm not opposed to it. But all we're going to do now, if we do not address all of these other issues, right, that have got us here, is we'll go from giving them 500 to giving them 1,000 to giving them 1,500 to giving them 2,000, and that will become the remedy. Where the remedy needs to be that we are creating emerging job markets, that we are in front of the eight ball in terms of educating our pool of citizens, right, to be able to compete for these jobs. Those are the things that we need to do, and we need to make sure that big corporations are not able to continue to take advantage of a system that only works for them, right? And part of that is, and so it all goes back, right? But you can do that once you get term limits in place, once you have ranked choice voting in place, once you move money out of politics, once you do all of those things, then you can begin to to adequately address these other issues. But as long as those things are in place, you're not going to be able to do it. But a telltale sign that we're in major trouble is that people are talking about giving free money to folks because they're going to need it. So I'm not opposed to it. I think it may be a very smart idea, but not a standalone idea. It has to be coupled with something that makes sense in terms of developing human capital, because that is where the big issue is, that we don't have, that human capital has not been developed at the rate that. And that's one of the things that Yang's not talking about. So he's talking about universal basic income, but he's not talking about the development of human capital. So again, quid pro quo. I'm giving you something. What am I getting a value in return? So am I getting the proper development? Are my tax dollars at the municipal level going for training? Can I get training somewhere? I'm looking through the websites and I see these emerging markets. How can I benefit? So that I can be competitive. So all of this stuff is happening around you, and like I said, folks are trying to figure out. I mean, I don't even know. What the hell in the workforce development, whether you're talking about Newark or, and I don't know what other towns within the 10th Congressional District have workforce development, but I do know that in Newark, folks from neighboring towns come to Newark. What are they teaching? Like, how are they prepping folks? When you look at these markets, what are they doing? And again, so for me, as the congressman who's representing the 10th Congressional District and going to Washington, and you're able to see these proposed laws, you've got senators and congressmen coming to you, talking to you about the things that they want to do and how they want you to be supportive of those things. How is Donald Payne looking at the deficits? And when I say deficits, I mean in human capital development, looking at the deficits in his congressional district and then trying to leverage that to say, well, look, here's what's going on in my district. Here's what's going on around the world. Here's what's happening globally. Here's what I need for you to vote on for me if you need me to vote on this for you. And then is he coming back and having those conversations with us about those things? I think not. Anyway, folks, if you're interested, $15 a month for 8 months. I don't know what that totals out to be, like $120 or something like that, right? Was it 8 months times 15? $120. I was correct. So it's $120 for the duration of the campaign. You can write a one-time check or you $15 a month. It would go a long way in us doing the things that we need to do, because one of the things that they believe is that I won't be able to raise the money. I won't be able to create the organization to be able to, at the very least, get this guy on a stage with me to debate the issues that impact you, right? To get him on the stage with me to debate the issues that impact you and to find out where he's been and what he's been doing. Because I'm going to tell you, in the areas that I've been knocking, they don't even know his name. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. And I will be back next Sunday. I will be on the show tomorrow, and we will continue this conversation. Thank you all for tuning in. I love you much. See you next Sunday.